Welcome to FoxTales Movie Club. I'm Sebastian Fox.
And I'm Tony Sherman. Each video we take a chosen movie and lead a discussion on our thoughts and opinions.
We will be getting to the character, plot, and technical achievements with no regard for spoilers.
So if you haven't seen this movie and don't want to hear said spoilers, you have been warned.
Also stick around to the end to hear the topic for the next video.
Today's video is Paddington.
Paddington is a movie that came out in 2015, directed by Paul King, composed by Nick Urata, I guess, starring Ben Whishaw, Hugh Bonneville, Sally Hawken, Nicole Kidman, and Peter Capaldi.
So this was my first time watching Paddington, and to be honest, I wasn't really sure what to expect and thought I wasn't necessarily going to enjoy it, but it ended up being really quite good. And on the second watch through, I think I enjoyed it even more, just catching all of the little bits of humor, especially like that British humor that just kind of sneaks in and you don't catch it until like a good second or so later.
Yeah, I didn't watch either this or the second one for a long time after they had come out.
Yeah.
Because just watching the trailers, I just assumed it was another talking animal movie that was just kind of cheaply made. But no, this one's actually really well written and very creatively shot and stuff.
Yeah, and it's got a good message.
Yeah.
In it as well. So definitely some very good themes that get brought up and talked about.
So the film starts out with this film being shot in darkest Peru.
Peru, yes.
By this geographer. Get introduced to the bears there, aunt and uncle.
Yeah, and I really liked how it kind of like just blends into that kind of old-timey film style and then transitions into like the kind of regular color kind of film style as well.
Yeah.
Once it goes past that, past the explorer, the geographer.
Yeah. Also, the hat, like his hat is red throughout the rest of the movie, but in that, since it's black and white, you can't really tell.
Yeah.
But if it was red, and I think it would look really out of place.
Yeah.
So I kind of like how that worked out there.
Right. I liked the when the explorer found out that they could talk, and they say London, he immediately just goes, okay, well now let's try Stratford upon Avon. Yep. And okay, yeah, we're going from a rather simple 2-syllable word to something that's quite more more syllables to deal with, though. But I don't know. Maybe has high expectations of these bears.
So the movie pretty quickly shows off its tone and that he's bringing along its travel piano and modest timepiece, the grandfather clock.
Right.
And then the bear saves his life, pulling the scorpion off.
Scorpion off of his chest. Yeah. Like it starts off with him raising up his rifle. Yeah. To like take a shot, but then very quickly realizes there's more to these bears than he realizes, and it would be a shame to take one down, which ends up causing a lot of the strife for the antagonist. Right. A lot of her motivations come from that decision not to bring a specimen back. To London.
So then it flashes to the present, I guess, introducing Paddington.
Right. Who we, I guess, don't know what his name is at that time, since he has the bear name, which we hear but aren't able to pronounce. So, but I really liked how he calls his aunt and uncle by their English
Yeah.
names, but he just goes by his bear name, which I guess even his aunt and uncle don't call him by that bear name.
Or at least they didn't during
Yeah. During the whole time that we see them interacting with him. So I don't know. I felt like it didn't feel off that they didn't call him by name.
Yeah.
And didn't really notice until later. It's like, oh yeah, he's got that bear name, and then he gets his English name. I wonder what his aunt and uncle called him.
Yeah.
And just we don't necessarily get any of that from that first bit.
Yeah, when he first runs in, his aunt calls him like her little hurricane or something. But yeah, no real names.
Just nicknames.
But it kind of makes sense that he doesn't have an English name since they got it from the Explorer. And he probably got his name from his parents, even though
that's true.
Died
they died very
really
young. That's right. Yeah. All right. Here we go. Sob stories.
Yeah. Well, it gets worse with this pretty quickly. His uncle dying in this earthquake.
Well, do we actually see him die, or do we just presume he falls asleep or something? It's rather sad.
Yeah.
Like you said, it sets a pretty dark, grim tone early on with the Explorer going to shoot one of the bears and decide not to, and then this whole earthquake destroying their entire ecosystem, basically all these trees falling and everything. So it seemed as if like they were prepared. They had this bunker and everything. So I don't know if there was necessarily like signs that such a thing was going to be coming. That maybe they knew that there was some kind of earthquake approaching.
Yeah. Or there could have just been earthquakes that weren't that bad before.
Prior. Yeah. But quite a bit more destructive that time around.
Yeah, there's a good bit of camera work right after when they're coming out of the bunker, and it just switches to like a handheld cam where it's kind of shaking around, but it just feels more like you're there. It feels more like actual footage of after a disaster.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel so much just like you're watching a movie.
Right.
Even though it's these animated characters.
Yeah. It wasn't even like live action. It was just all CGI. But yeah, that's interesting that they would make that decision to go with those kind of camera shots. I guess once they realize that they no longer have this home in Peru, they rely on what the Explorer told them instead of saying you always can find a place here in London.
Right.
And the aunt sends little Paddington off by himself to try and hitchhike or stow away on a ship to get to London.
And she goes off to the Home for Retired Bears.
Home for Retired Bears.
Which I feel like that's supposed to be a wink to like the older, like the parents in the audience of like she's supposed to be like passing away. She's off in the great field. She's then at the end of the movie it's real.
It's real. It's like, I'm going to the Home of the Retired Bears. It's like, oh man, is she like actually mortally wounded as well? And she's just softening the blow using some kind of euphemism.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's not quite that dark, I guess. Oh man, but she does say to him that those in London won't have forgotten how to treat a stranger.
Yeah.
And that kind of, and with that first watch through, I kind of latched onto that quote, thinking, okay, that's probably going to be a theme that's kind of looked at throughout this thing, of this idea of a stranger being in a new place, dealing with this new environment and not having a place where you're necessarily familiar, where you know people.
Right.
And that was definitely something that we see in some of the other characters as well.
Yeah, I like that they draw the similarities between the children during the Blitzkrieg.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
During the Blitzkrieg.
Mm-hmm.
because she mentions it at the beginning and gives him the tag, and then the Mr. Gruber brings it up later as well.
Like, antique shop guy.
Yeah.
Which that was actually a very interesting little sequence where he's telling the story about how he had to do something similar, and you see the little train, and it's got him showing what's happening in the little train. I thought that was really fascinating, really kind of a unique way to show his side of the story.
Yeah, I want a T-train like that. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, bringing what was it he said? Bringing salvation around 11 o'clock each day. It's just like, that's so good. But yeah, he also has a line talking about how he gets sent off to this place where it was a family. It was, I think, an aunt that he knew, and he says something along the lines of, a home is more than just a place where it's someone you know, that there's much more to it, because it even like shows his aunt reaching out just like shake hands with him. It's like, that's a very cold,
very stilted emotions.
Yeah. So it seemed less caring for him. So it's kind of interesting, those ideas of, okay, what is going to be making up a home?
Yeah.
It gets talked about and explored throughout the movie.
As Paddington is going from Peru to England, to London, I like how they show the passage of time with where he starts eating the marmalade, and it shows more and more
jars
there.
Yeah. It was strange because I was thinking he's got this little briefcase thing, and it's like, it looks like he has maybe no more than like 12 jars of marmalade, and then it just cuts and you see like 30 or 40 jars of marmalade. So like, okay, where did all these jars come from? It's like the TARDIS, where this briefcase of marmalade, it just holds.
Just keep pulling them out.
More and more marmalade just keeps appearing.
Yeah. Which that's kind of, this movie has a lot of French, and what's the word? Inspiration, kind of.
Yeah.
It draws on a lot of French cinema.
Yeah.
And its design, and just sort of that fantastical nature of just being able to have like all of that marmalade there, or like even the tea train, or just kind of the layout of the Brown's house with like the spiral staircase.
Yeah.
It's just the way it kind of comes across as this fantastical world is very French.
Yeah. I really liked how when we first see their house, when we first go inside their house and we see that spiral staircase, and we see painted on the wall this tree.
Yeah.
So it brought back those ideas of, okay, so Paddington was in Peru. He was living in this tree house.
Yeah.
And now he's finding this home where it's a home with a tree inside of it.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to include that in their home.
Yeah. So speaking of the Browns, I guess we can go back to when they're introduced.
Yes.
Getting back from the, what was it, the yarn?
Wool? Something about wool. So just like a wool festival or something.
Yeah.
I don't even know.
I think it was more like a museum. It wasn't even like a festival.
Yeah, just like a museum for wool. and like all the kids were like, this was so boring. And then Mr. Brown's just like, but we learned so much about wool. It's like, oh my gosh, I love it. I love it. Yeah, I feel like there's so many of these little one-liners that especially Mr. Brown has, that are just like, it's the perfect kind of humor that I just love, where it's just like, this is wonderful. And even when he sees Paddington the first time, he's just like, oh, danger, stranger, don't make eye contact, let's walk away.
Yeah.
And but once Mrs. Brown speaks with Paddington, and it's like, let's get you some help. And Paddington says, oh, that's not gonna be any trouble, is it? And so like they both look at Mr. Brown, and Mr. Brown's just like, no, it won't. And like he kind of like, I feel like, I don't know if this is just like a British thing, but it's just kind of like, well, we're gonna keep our word. We're gonna help this person. So now we're gonna do what we said we're going to do. So like, even though he was so against it and didn't want to even make eye contact with the bear and now he's just like, nope, this is something that we'll have to do now. This is something
I think it's also kind of just he knows his wife and knows that she's going to help Paddington or help this bear no matter
no matter what. Yeah.
But I think that first scene does a very good job of kind of setting up the dynamic within the family, where Judy has her headphones on the entire time and kind of walks away when her mom tries to call her by one of her
pet names.
And you have
Jonathan jumping around, and you get Mrs. Brown is just like, I'm just happy to be able to spend time with the family, and then Mr. Brown's just like, 67% of injuries are caused by jumping. It's like, where is he getting these statistics? He's just coming up with all of them. But I mean, later on, we realize that he's this risk analyst. So I guess it makes sense that like that's him. He's thinking all these numbers. He's thinking about, okay, well, this is what's going to happen if you do this. You can't run. You can't jump. We have to go to these wool museums that are safe and soft, and if you fall on any of the exhibits, you're okay. But I love it. It was great. Yeah, especially the two people that stand out most for me in this movie are the Mr. and Mrs. Brown. I think Mrs. Brown is just very interesting. Just the way Sally Hawkins acted it. Just don't see much like that, and just the way the way that the two of them play off of each other is very good. It seems like they just know each other so well. They're just like such a perfect couple. And like even when I think this is right after they left Paddington alone at the house, and Millicent breaks in basically, and afterwards Mr. and Mrs. Brown are discussing, are like, this is terrible. This was Mr. Brown's thinking, we just got to get rid of this bear. It's, it's a danger to the children. And the whole thing where he stands up from the table, walks over, and she's just like, okay, you're standing up, you're doing your breathing exercises. I'm doing my breathing exercises. It's like, and then turns around, lifts a finger, raises his voice, and just, they just know exactly. She knows exactly what he's going to be doing. She's seen this kind of thing before. So it's just interesting to me that dynamic works so well. When Paddington first gets his name, I thought there's and we get a lot of this kind of humor, whether it's like this, not quite slapstick, but just this kind of humor where he's holding this weird ketchup bottle, bites into it. Oh, that's not ripe yet, and they're trying to come up with a name. And Mrs. Brown says, "Oh, it's perfect." And
what do you call him? Ketchup.
Ketchup the bear. And then so when he hears Paddington, he's like, Paddington, and squeezes the ketchup bottle, and it just flies off. And you just hear this person in the background. He's like, oh, and so it's just like little things like that, just like small little things that they didn't even need to have this person screaming in the back. They could have just had the ketchup shoot off and hit something else, but it just of course has to hit a person. When they saw Paddington the first time when they were getting off the train, there was no one else around. There was all these people getting off the train, but then no one else. Like there's no one else there. So there's just a handful of people. Of course, one of them just has to get hit by this ketchup. We also have one of the things that was really interesting was when Mrs. Brown first walks up to Paddington at the train station. And above him, you have that lost and found, where the found light finally flickers back on once she walks up to him. So I was like, that's it's lovely. It's so good. Another one of those weird kind of comedy points that kind of gave me even a little bit of like this uncomfortable kind of feeling was when Paddington and Mr. Brown, I think they're like trying to like somewhat infiltrate the Geographers Guild. And they're in the elevator in Paddington, and Mr. Brown is kind of grouping, not wanting to really get involved with this sneakery, and so Paddington just stares at him and just keeps staring, and I'm just like, I don't like this. And then he's like, that was a hard stare.
Yeah.
It's used to make those uncomfortable when they forgotten their manners.
Yep.
So I was like, well, that definitely worked.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's been a long time since I've heard any of or read any of the books, but I'm pretty sure that was in the books too.
Really?
So
yeah,
nice that they brought that back.
Yeah, that's funny. I wonder. I feel like it's a very like visual kind of bit, so it's kind of interesting to see. I wonder how they pulled that off in the text. Just had him staring.
Yeah.
You know, just had Mr. Brown's dialogue, and then nothing from Paddington. Just Paddington stares. Paddington stares harder. It's great.
After they decide to take Paddington back to their house for the night, they get this cab by a Doctor Who actor. If you've watched that,
yeah. Unfortunately, I can't say I have. There's I know a few things, but that's not to say very much.
And I like how they do this because they do this thing where they go to like a bunch of different go by a bunch of different places within London, where like a lot of movies do this early on.
Yeah.
But it just kind of doesn't really make sense. But then the character, the cabbie, says it was the bear's first time. Wanted to show him the sights.
Show him the sights. It's like, yeah, because I'm thinking, are they really just like driving around? Like they're leaving the train station. Why don't they just go straight home? They're like driving to all of these different places, and you also as they're driving and you're getting all of these sights, they have this kind of like jazzy kind of reggae music. These trumpet.
Yeah, wrote it down as a calypso band. I don't know if that's right, but yeah.
I think that sounds good. I think calypso sounds pretty good. Has a good feel to it, but and so one of the things that I know that you have brought up in previous movies is. I'm probably going to butcher this word, but the diegetic music. And that's something that every once in a while I'll think about when I hear some of the music, and especially in like scenes like that. And so I wasn't really thinking about it until we see the band as they drive past. I'm like, wonderful. I just love it. And it's this band pops up several other times.
Keeps coming back. And there's even one time when I think Paddington like walks up and like starts like dancing along to the music. So it's just like, oh man. It's such an interesting little just thing to add. It doesn't really do anything to the story, but it's just
this calypso band that's, you know, all over London whenever the Browns are wandering.
Always have the perfect song.
Yeah. Yeah. You get this nice upbeat song when you're showing the sights of London, and you get this much softer, slower piano song when Paddington feels as if he needs to leave the Browns and go out and search for what's the person's name? M.
Clyde.
M. Clyde, himself. And that was another time where I guess we kind of get shots of London, where we get especially
less of the, because like at the beginning it was just kind of like the shots of like the more
some of the
more iconic locations, but at the end you do get Buckingham Palace in that one scene.
That's true. Yeah,
but then it's more just like
the scale of this, the scope of like how far he's needing to go out and search, especially out in this rain. So yeah, I thought that was really kind of a neat way to show that he's been throughout this entire evening, just kind of going from house to house.
I think it was actually supposed to be more than one evening. I'm not sure.
That's true.
I think I've kind of assumed that it's been actually quite a bit of time between there.
Yeah, that's possible, because it seems as if they were, even like Mrs. Bird makes a comment about how they needed the bear. They needed the bear just as much as he needed them. And you kind of get that feel that they've fallen apart in those days, or however long it had been since Paddington had left.
Yeah.
That's true. It probably was more than just that one evening.
But I wanted to go back to a few things in Brown's house when they first got there, because they have a very interesting decor there.
Yeah.
Like I've talked about the spiral staircase and the tree painted on the wall there.
Yeah.
But then they also have things like the carousel horse that's just in the study.
Yeah.
I liked in the bathroom there's an emergency exit sign over the exit there.
I didn't notice that.
Seemed like it fit for Mr. Brown's personality.
Yeah. He has all his bases covered.
Yeah.
So, like you have Judy's room, which is just covered wall to wall with like pictures or whatever, like all this stuff all over. And you have Jonathan's room that have all of these like intricate toys and stuff, all these different things that he's pieced together and put together the space decor as well. Him wanting to be an astronaut. It's lovely.
Yeah, with the kids, there's a scene pretty early on where Jonathan brings up Judy's boyfriend, Tony.
Yes.
And then Mrs. Brown wants to meet him.
Yeah.
And then the two kids start running around the table. And I was curious as to know if that was a reference to The Incredibles, because in that movie there's a similar conversation between the two kids where Violet is interested in Tony Ridinger, so also another Tony, and then once they get into it, they also start running around the table there. So I didn't know if that was playing off that or not.
Yeah. I feel like there were a few other things done in this movie that are kind of just little allusions or callbacks to other movies or other or not even just movies but other things about like nearing the end. Again, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but near the end of the movie we get the whole like Paddington trying to escape by climbing up this air vent, and it plays just like a 3-second long snippet of the Mission Impossible theme. And so just like little things like that I think were pretty well done. That they just like insert.
Yeah, and with that, the Mission Impossible sequence there, I like how they do things like that at the end, but they're like very well set up in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
Because he finds the vacuum pretty early on after he knocks over a bowl of cereal.
Right.
And then gets stuck to the ceiling.
Yeah.
So I like that it doesn't just come out of nowhere.
Right. Yeah, we have that.
Everything's set up.
We have that continuity of these vacuum cleaners are so strong they can lift up a bear. They can hold up a bear. So yeah, we do get a little bit of that.
So one cool thing that these Paddington movies do is they'll have these miniatures of like a dollhouse that kind of looks like the house that they're in, and it will go in and open, and as it will kind of show you the layout of the house and talk about the different characters.
Right, what they're doing, what they're up to.
Yeah.
I really like that, especially like the first time we see that happening is when Paddington is riding back to his aunt.
Yeah.
And he's talking about the people who've taken him in, and the camera just pans over to the model, and it opens, and we see everyone walking around.
Yeah.
And then we get that description of who they are and what they're doing, and how their relationship is developing with Paddington, or how Paddington is getting to know them.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting.
I also like during those sequences how they'll cut away to give these like small details of like how Mrs. Bird has a Hoover for every situation. It shows all of the different Hoovers.
Yeah.
Or how Mrs. Brown is pulling out all the weird things out of her bag.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or Mr. Brown says that having a bear in the house has a risk of like plus 4,000%. And it has like all these different things that would make up the 4,000%. Like he had like all these like formulas and calculations. And he's like, Jonathan has his fur allergy, like all these different things. Like, oh, that's wonderful. I like how when we are shifting from one character to another in this model, we get like the little bit of the wall of the model house kind of acts as that frame, so that way when you cut over to this new person, you get kind of that the wall of the house acts as that frame that's shifting. Yeah.
So you can go from the one person to the next. I like that.
Yeah, I want to know how much of a set they built for that. Like if they actually built like the full floors of each, or just, I'm curious to know.
Yeah,
kind of what they did there.
Yeah, because that is something that I feel like you do see, like you could definitely do without having built up a set like that. But you do also see other movies where they would do something like that, where they develop some kind of complex set that would have been just as easy to have done without the set, but it does kind of make for a better kind of feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then Paddington sleeps the night in the rafters in the attic.
Mm-hmm.
I like how he goes up to the rafters rather than lying on the bed.
Yeah, there's a bed there.
Just used to being in a tree.
Yeah.
But then the next day, he and Mrs. Brown go to their to her antique shop friend.
Right.
But before that, or try to get on the London Underground. The tube.
Yeah, and we get these shots of Paddington not really knowing what to do, how to like navigate with even the little turnstile thing, and puts his ticket in, and then gets his closed on his face.
Yeah,
and so then the I guess the attendant there helps him through, and then it again closes closes right on him.
Yeah, and then he kind of gets separated. I like when the Browns when they realize that he isn't there and they start looking for him. If you look at the posters hanging on the walls, there are some that like they're asking like, "Where's Paddington?" And you'll see one that says like, "Not sure."
That's funny. I didn't notice
see
that.
ones that will say like, "Look again," as they're like looking around.
That's funny. Yeah, I noticed that like when they realize that Paddington's not there, they all just kind of like run off in different directions, just like go everywhere trying to find him, without like even saying, "Okay, you look here, you look here." They just immediately just disperse to go and look for him.
Yeah.
And of course, when we cut back to Paddington, and he's just kind of stuck at the escalator.
Yeah.
And this is one joke that I feel like, I don't know if I just didn't get it or just like it was just so absurd to me.
Yeah.
Just like, must carry dogs.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, you're going down the escalator, you pick up your dog. And so he just sees that as, oh no, this is like an order. You must carry a dog.
Yeah.
So we go and we get him carrying this little Chihuahua dog.
Yeah, one thing I don't like about this sequence, it's basically the only thing that I can really point to about this movie that I really don't like.
Yeah.
Is the use of the music here, because it has this I don't know, it's not really pop music.
Yeah. I feel good.
Yeah, I feel good.
Yeah.
Coming in, it just kind of feels out of place.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I don't really even know what kind of song I would like, but that was one where I felt like
I feel like they could have just kept the score going there. They didn't have to do, and I feel like that's something that's done a lot, especially in kids' movies.
Yeah,
where they feel like need to bring in pop music.
Mm-hmm. Something that the kids can then start singing unceasingly. Yeah, just like always singing this terrible, god awful pop song, which I also felt like the song at the end of the movie in the credits. Yeah, I thought it was pretty well done, but I felt like it didn't really fit. I felt like it wasn't like a really good. I don't know.
Just like at least that one, like it, like this what they were singing about fit with the movie, but the tone didn't really exactly work.
Right. So okay, yeah, that's all right. I was listening to on the radio. I was listening to some people talk about film scores more in general. So like rather than necessarily like insert music like that, like pop music and stuff, but like the actual score that gets written, that during the production process they will a lot of times borrow music from other movies and just be like, all right, we'll just use this here to kind of get a feel for, this is what this scene might look like. And then when the director has the composer actually go out and write music for the movie, they're like, yeah, just basically rewrite that song. Yeah. And it's like, I feel like that's something that now having seen that and realized that, oh yeah, that is a thing that you pick up on. You're like, I feel like I've heard this song before. I feel like I've heard this exact kind of theme before. So it's like, that's kind of strange.
There definitely are a lot of movies that do that.
Yeah.
Not this one though.
Yeah, thankfully.
This one has a pretty good score.
Yeah, yeah. I love especially the music that was during the facilities fight scene. And like even not just like the music, but also just like the sound effects that get thrown in there. Where like the shower head, as it's like waving around like the snake, you get like this hissing kind of sound. And so I'm like, I loved it. That was such a great scene. It was so wonderful.
Yeah, I love the scenes like that in these movies. So there's something happens and then there's an effect that happens because of it. It's just cause and effect. Keep pushing the scene forward, and it just works so well.
Yeah, yeah. And apparently they actually shot the scene with the tub going down the spiral staircase. That was like an actual tub, and they had to like do like all of these different takes to try and get this tub to perfectly go down the staircase. So like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so wonderful. I just had to write down this quote, the little saying, when Paddington is missing and Mrs. Brown goes to these officers to like let them know, we're looking for this person who's lost.
Yeah.
He's got this blue petticoat and he's got this red hat and he's a bear. And the officer just like, well, it's not much to go on. It's not really.
I really like how they handle having a bear in London in this movie, where it's like it's kind of weird, but it's more like it's just a foreigner almost.
Yeah.
So but it does, like, they do treat him as a bear kind of. Yeah. Like they understand that he's furry and everything, not the same species.
Right. Like people recognize that it's a bear, but then they don't react the way that they would if they saw an actual bear in London, just walking around the streets. So it's interesting, but yeah, it was just like even when the Browns see him the first time, they're like, "Oh, there's a bear."
Yeah, some sort of bear on the platform.
Probably trying to sell something. Yeah. It was like, oh my goodness, I love it. It's just okay.
Yeah, and I like how Mr. Curry reacts, where he it's more of like a racist perspective there.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is something you don't see a ton in kids' films. You see it some, like Zootopia does it pretty well, but here it just kind of shows up for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and then that kind of brings us back to like this theme of, home identity and like what makes a place a home and who do you allow into your home and, who do you accept. And so like when we haven't really talked about her very much, but Millicent, the, I guess, antagonist, the kind of villain of this story, when she does meet with Mr. Curry this one time at his home, she's talking about, yes, it is only one bear now, but you wait and, eventually they're gonna be crawling all over the streets. Yeah. So there's this whole idea of because he basically is kind of like this illegal immigrant. He's stowed away on this ship and snuck into London. It's like, yes, he's a bear, but like the idea of that is like, okay, the villains are seeing it as just like we're gonna have these bears just roaming the city, all over the streets, where it's like, well, the Browns try and bring Paddington in, and like even initially they're like, well, we'll bring you in for one night, and try and find a guardian for you, try and find someone to take care of you. So even if they aren't like completely accepting and willing to open up their home to this person, they're willing enough to aid and try and find some kind of help of, okay, where can this poor bear go? Where can we find a home for this person? I guess not really person, but I guess, metaphorically speaking.
Continuing on in the movie, they go to that antique shop, and then Paddington chases this guy and gets the guy's wallet, or tries to return the guy's wallet, and ends up tackling him to the ground.
Yeah. And kind of initially, like prior to this, Judy was kind of like, I don't want anything to do with Paddington.
Yeah.
But now, seeing how he's kind of like this hero, he was now in the paper, Paddington was in the paper, she's kind of sees him in a different way. Like, okay, yeah, he is this, he's better than we thought that he was, just like this annoying kind of bear that's kind of just in our home now.
Yeah, I really like how that relationship develops, because then Paddington, they start talking about it, and Paddington says it's not easy being somewhere new, and she's like, no, it isn't.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and he starts teaching her bear.
Yeah.
She has quite a knack for languages. She was learning Chinese earlier in the movie, and now she's learning bear, and actually has pretty good pronunciation apparently. So yeah.
Not like Mr. Brown.
That was very rude. Yeah. So after he gets this this show in the newspaper, like I paused it to like take a look at some of the different headlines.
Yeah.
And so the headline for Paddington was Peruvian growler catches Portobello prowler, and I was like, okay, that's pretty clever. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And then like some of the other headlines that were around were like, the London are wanting to shrink the size of their notes. I was like, what is that about? Like, I don't know how much of this is just like
interesting. Yeah.
stuff that they just want to like, well, we have to put something in here, or whether it's actually something that means.
Yeah, newspapers are a very interesting thing in movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So after once Paddington and the kids kind of start getting along, they start cleaning him up, and they give him the coat, the blue coat.
Yes.
I like how in this movie they give significance to both the hat and the coat, where the hat came from his uncle, and the coat is kind of the Browns giving. Showing their acceptance of him into the family.
Yeah. The hat he got from his uncle, who got it from the explorer.
Yeah.
And so then the blue coat, Judy makes a comment of, oh yeah, this used to be mine. This was mine originally.
Well, Jonathan says it first. And then Judy says
yes.
that was mine.
It was mine
before him.
And then that's when Mr. Brown steps in.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, actually. So yeah, you get this kind of like hand-me-down kind of coat that, yeah, like you said, does kind of signify their acceptance of him. Like, okay, yeah, you're going to be part of this family.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then that is finally enough to convince Mr. Brown to go to the Geographers Guild.
Right. And they're trying to find out who this explorer is. They don't even have a name, but they're like, well, we know that there was someone who went down to Peru, and this Geographers Guild, as strange as it is, we get this whole like weird tube pipe delivery system.
Yeah,
that's just like, why?
Yeah, another one of these fantastical things, and this just makes the world feel just more intense. I guess.
Yeah. So it's just like, this is very interesting, this kind of system that they have. But then when they sneak into the like this research area where they can get to the computers, is these massive CRT computer monitors, and like the mouse is like one of those old style mouse that has like the weird 2-button things, like, and
the operating system just looks like DOS or something. It's not even
right. It's just like, what is this place? It's so strange to me.
I feel like some movies do that, and I feel like this one definitely is trying to just make it feel more timeless, where it doesn't really fit into a specific time period. That technology just more of like, it feels old, but it will always just feel like a little bit old, I think, and it's just kind of what they're going for.
Right. Yeah. We also get, in order to sneak into this Geographers Guild area, Mr. Brown dresses up as a woman, and they sneak out with, I guess, some like film that they bring back to the antique shop, and this is where we get the children commenting about Paddington tells them, oh yeah, he dressed up as a girl. He wore a dress.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what he says. He says it was less a dress and more of something else, some other
more like a night coat or something.
Night coat or something, yeah. But the kids make a comment about how that's so unlike you, Dad, to do something like this, and we get this. We end up learning more about Mr. Brown's past from Mrs. Bird as well. She tells the kids about, well, there's more to your dad than meets the eye, and we get this whole sequence of, again, the Mr. and Mrs. Brown couple, pre-children, I guess like kind of like this in one kind of sequence, this pre and post birth of Judy, where they have the motorcycle, they go into the hospital, walk through the revolving doors, and then they cut back and they're walking out of the revolving door, and now they're wearing normal people clothing. Yep. They no longer have the motorcycle, and they have this very beige, very beige
it's a common
station wagon kind of thing.
Yeah. I like this movie does some interesting things with color, where because like after Paddington leaves the Browns' place, it shows them reading his letter, and it's very undersaturated there. And also here it does a similar thing where they're wearing a lot of bright colors when they come in, and it's very just neutral colors when they come out.
When they come back out, so very interesting. So that like I feel like one of the things that I think about in a lot of different movies is I wish I could know more about what this character was like previously. I wish I got more of the backstory of this character. And here we actually do. We actually get more information about what, especially Mr. Brown, was like prior to his getting kids and realizing, okay, well, I have to become like this helicopter parent, watching over them 24/7, making sure they're always safe.
I would like to know if he became a risk analyst because of having the kid and starting to have that feeling, or if he was a risk analyst and that's why he thought he needed to protect them to that extent. Yeah,
it's interesting. This weird kind of cause and effect.
So they get this film and they take it back to the home and they start watching it. I like here because it's the film from the beginning of the movie, so rather than showing it again, they show Paddington kind of like walk into the film and walk through it, and then he's just in the forest.
And you have the color and you have the sounds and everything.
So it shows more what he's feeling rather than what's actually going on.
Right. Yeah. That is a very very fascinating way of approaching that we aren't getting what's literally being shown on the screen. We're not getting what they're seeing in the film, but we are getting those emotions that Paddington's feeling basically being brought out as he sees his home as it once was. Pretty good.
Then after he gets the film, there was the scene you talked about where he starts looking through the phone books for M. Clyde's.
Yes.
But then he's left home alone, and there's that big misunderstanding where
he sees an elephant.
Yeah. But it had the head of an elephant.
The head of an elephant.
With the body of a snake.
What? Oh dear. Have you been drinking salt water? What a weird line. I've never heard that before.
Maybe
drinking salt water
dehydrates you enough to where you start hallucinating.
Hallucinating?
I don't know.
Maybe.
I've never heard of that either. But then there's this miscommunication where Paddington hears this Brown's talking through the pipes. And thinks he figures he should just kind of go out on his own to find M. Clyde.
Right. Yeah, which I think again a very nice way to kind of show his journey through London, where you have the names and the addresses kind of popping
the
up.
skyline. The names come up above it.
And they're scratched out as he goes to each one. Like, that's so cool.
Yeah, and there's also a cool transition kind of showing the passage of time where that tree in the Brown's house, the flowers fall off the tree. So it's kind of saying it's going from sort of summertime into fall.
Right, and so things are, as the days are getting shorter, it's getting darker. We're also getting kind of this darker kind of turn in the movie where Paddington has left, the family has lost this bear that kind of brought them together in this very special way.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of everything's going south for them. So yeah, definitely a very interesting representation of that kind of shift.
And at the last house Paddington has on his list, he finally finds the person he was looking for, or the daughter of the person he was looking for.
Yes. So we get M. Clyde, and again, I guess this is now Millicent Clyde.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if they ever use her last name. I don't remember. But,
I don't think so.
But yeah, so we get... we, as the audience, is this interesting sense of dramatic irony that we, as the audience, realize who it is.
Yeah.
But, of course, Paddington... She had the mask on.
Yeah.
It looked like an elephant. So he doesn't realize. So he just kind of goes along with her. So it is that sense of we as the audience can feel that tension and the suspense of knowing, okay, this is going poorly. This is not going where it needs to be going. And Paddington just kind of like naively, blindly just goes along with it.
Yeah, and then when they're walking through the museum and she's pointing out the different exhibits, and he's just kind of like, how you doing?
How you doing? Good day. Yeah, he's just, oh man. And when she finally reveals the exhibit where he's going to be, I think it was interesting, like the whole, like, there's like the lightning kind of strike, and there's like the crazy like sound effect, the chord strike that's there, and then you see like him flashing into the exhibit with this like weird look on his face, like, oh my goodness, it's kind of terrifying. But yeah, like I don't know whether it's supposed to be funny, but like the line where she says, "You're going to be stuffed bear," like you're going to be stuffed bear, like I feel like it's just, I thought it was like a joke, but it also felt like it was supposed to be kind of a serious moment.
Yeah.
So.
Then the Browns find out about it and make their way.
Make haste. Yeah.
Yeah, and basically everything that's mentioned throughout the movie comes back in this one in sequence.
Yeah, the sewers for them to be able to sneak back in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even when Mr. Brown decides that he's going to climb out the window to kind of like work his way around to where Paddington is. Yeah. And he steps around and swoops Mrs. Brown in for a kiss, and then you get the whole her adventure novel, the children's illustrations that she's doing.
Finally gets a face for her
illustration. For the hero. Oh man, it's so fun. It's so funny. Yeah. I really liked how they find out that Paddington got kidnapped and taken to this. Like, when I saw it, I thought it was a church. I was like,
yeah, it does look like a church, kind of.
But like it's like this like churchy cathedral kind of thing, but it's been like revamped into this museum. Yeah. But the Browns are told of Paddington's bear napping by Mr. Curry on the phone using a strange voice. But it's
Mr. Murray.
But apparently that's what I think that was Capaldi's actual voice. When he's doing that strange accent, that was supposed to be his actual accent. So I was like, oh, okay. That's funny. But just that whole sequence of him trying to hide who it is. It's like, it's clearly Mr. Curry.
Yeah. So in the very end, when they get up onto the roof, and Millicent seems to have them cornered.
Right.
Paddington has this last idea of how to get out of the situation.
Right.
And we haven't really talked about the pigeons throughout the entire.
Yes,
yet,
with all this jumping around, we've kind
Yeah.
of skipped over the pigeons.
but throughout the entirety of the movie, the pigeons have been wanting the marmalade sandwich.
The marmalade
in Paddington's
sandwich that
house.
he keeps in his hat for emergencies.
Yeah.
Of course, you always have to keep a marmalade sandwich on you. It has enough vitamins and minerals to feed a bear for an entire day.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So these pigeons that it reminds me of the How to Train Your Dragon a little bit, where in the third one, where there's that little like weird dragon that they mention is like, oh yeah, this is a bad omen, that if you see this dragon, and it's like you see one, and then you see two, and then you just see like hundreds of, not hundreds, but you see tons of them all over. It's a similar kind of idea. I feel like this is kind of like a common kind of thing that like you see one thing, like even with Finding Nemo with the seagulls, mine with you have one of them and then
the
all
jellyfish.
Of them. Yeah, the jellyfish call you little squishy.
Yeah. Yeah, but Paddington throws his sandwich at
yes. Back to the actual movie that we're talking about. Yes, throws the sandwich.
But she doesn't quite fall.
Right.
It doesn't actually work.
Yeah, and like she doesn't, and so it's like, oh, okay, I get she caught herself, like, and then somehow, like, out of nowhere, Mrs. Bird just kind of like pops up. I feel like I felt like her character was very strange throughout this movie.
Yeah.
Like,
a bit interesting.
Yes, very interesting. It's like drinks this weird security guard under the table.
Yeah, and I like how they, in that sequence, they change hats.
The
middle of, like, but you don't even see them change hats. You just see that they are wearing each other's hat.
Yeah, they just are. But like, I feel like Mrs. Bird didn't even realize what happened.
Yeah.
When she like appears on the rooftop, because she just kind of like throws this trap door kind of thing, this door open.
Yeah.
This hatch to the roof open, and she just like shouts out like crow's nest or something, and it's just like, oh, you kids are gonna have to be more quiet and gentle. I've got a headache. Like, oh dear, Mrs. Bird. Oh man, we love you so much. But yeah, such a interesting way to end it, that we get Mrs. Bird. We get the birds of the pigeons trying to like throw Millicent off, and then we get actual Mrs. Bird to deliver the final blow of knocking her off onto this, I guess, kind of like a flagpole.
Yeah, I think it was.
On the end of the building.
Yeah. And then, as punishment, Millicent gets sentenced to community service in the petting zoo, her father's petting zoo.
Her father's petting zoo. I that's so fitting. But like, you know, this was her like, we haven't really talked at length about her motivations.
Yeah.
But I felt like she was definitely had good reasons for what she was doing. Like, her whole thing was trying to bring back her father's honor, that as a child she saw it as he is trying to gain the acceptance of the Geographers Guild, and for whatever reason she's so young she doesn't realize what exactly the hard decision he made to not bring back a sample, a specimen to the museum, but causes all of the other geographers to turn their backs on him.
Quite literally,
yeah. And so like, she from that young age then just completely sees it as, well, I need to bring back this honor for my father by fulfilling what he was not able to do or decided not to do, which is like this tragic kind of tale for her. Yeah, because
it really it ate up basically her entire life, because she had that whole wall of like looking for them,
looking for the bear.
She dedicated her life to taxidermy basically to be able to complete her mission.
Right, and so it's just this really tragic kind of kind of story for her.
Yeah, except she just never realizes what she's really
doing, because it's going against exactly what the ideals of her father of these were an intelligent species. They should not be slaughtered and then stuffed and put in a museum. They should be allowed to live where they are. So works so hard to protect them, and she then goes against that and works so hard to try and just capture and just stuff one of these poor bears.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was definitely one where I was like thinking that this is definitely a villain that I can. It's kind of hard to watch the story of hers, because it's like, oh my goodness, to her it all makes sense what she's doing. This is the right thing for her to do, but then knowing the full story, you can see how broken and twisted her understanding of it really was.
Yeah. But I definitely really like Nicole Kidman in this role.
Yes.
She was having so much fun.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it was perfect. Yeah. I read that when her kids found out that she was going to have this role in the Paddington movie, they were all excited because they're thinking, oh, you're going to be able to play Paddington's mother. And then she's like, no, I'm playing the bad guy. And the kids were just mortified, just devastated. It's like, oh man, that's true. That's something that I don't really think about. It's like, oh yeah, like all these people who have to play the bad guys.
Yeah.
Like that's such a hard role to play because everyone's going to hate you for it.
But I have heard that it's typically more fun to play the villain.
Yeah.
And she definitely seems she's having so much fun.
Yeah. I did also read about she took all of these like classes and lessons to learn how to do all these like knife and dagger tricks.
Oh wow.
And like when she first hears about Paddington, about the bear being in London, she throws her knife and it hits the wall where it has all the different newspapers. And so I think that's the only time that we get to see anything of that, because all the other stuff, I think the director said like it felt too serious, too dark for the kids movie to have like all these crazy knife tricks. But I was like, that's such a fun thing that would have been interesting to add into the movie, but it was all for naught.
So I want to review a few other characters that we haven't really talked a ton about.
Right.
I think I want to talk more about Mr. Curry, because we really haven't talked about him.
Yes.
Also known as the Doctor.
Yeah. So I've seen the equivalent of one episode of Doctor Who. I've seen,
and it was his with him in it, right? Basically,
let's see. So I saw, yes, because it was one that I watched like half of an episode with you, with this big group this one time, and then there was another time where I watched half of the episode with the stone angel don't blink things, and it's to my great dismay that I can't say that I've ever seen any more of it. But that was a character that when I did see that character in Paddington, I was like, oh, I do recognize this person. I do recognize that they are the Doctor. So that was one person that I did recognize.
I like how he's introduced in the movie, where like first you actually see kind of from his window when Paddington first arrives.
Looking down.
You just kind of see it from an outsider. You see him arriving from an outsider's perspective. But then when all the Browns and Paddington are leaving the next morning, it kind of the camera's pulling away from the front door and starts doing like this Dutch tilt.
Yes.
Bring Mr. Curry into the frame.
Yeah. I remember like both times I watched the movie, it felt a little disorienting at first because I'm like watching like why is the camera tilting, and then it just works perfectly and doesn't like once it ends up with the window in the frame and you see Mr. Curry speaking out of the window, it then feels fine. But like I feel like that like split second of like the start of the tilt of the camera just feels like, whoa, what's happening? we're falling.
But it works so well to introduce that character.
Yeah.
It's just so.
Yeah, because he is such a character that's like in the background, like watching them kind of from afar. So like to have him introduced and call out to the Browns in such a way where we have Paddington and the Browns in the foreground and him way out in his window in the background.
Yeah.
It does have that very nice kind of way to show his character for that, or I guess really kind of for the first time where we're seeing him interacting with the Browns.
Yeah. And then I also really like his relationship with Millicent, where when he first finds her in the phone box and it starts playing Hello.
Yes.
For like just a few seconds.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like maybe going back again to like this kind of like this insert music that they do. Yeah. I feel like if they did something like that with the Chihuahua dog, if it was just like a few seconds, I feel like that might have worked all right. But I felt like it was a little bit too extended when they were there, the underground.
Yeah. I do feel like it works more for falling in love than it does for most other emotions. Because like that, it was put in to convey a specific feeling, basically. Yes, and exactly. It really worked for that. It was so good.
Yeah. And I even caught myself like starting to sing along, and then the song gets cut off. I'm like, oh man, I wanted to have more of that.
Yeah, I love how it just stops right when they start talking again.
Yeah. It's interesting. His when he first calls to her when she's in the box, like he even like calls her boy or something like that. He's like, "Hey, young man, you've been in this box for 47 minutes." Like you're either on like a very long phone call or you're like putting up graffiti or stickers or something weird. Oh man. That's great.
And then he comes up with the name Honeypot for her. He keeps calling her that throughout the entire movie.
Is that supposed to be like something with bears and honey? Maybe I don't know. But when he calls her to come and says the bear, the furry menace is home alone, and she comes over, again with this like weird kind of like pretty dry humor comedy thrown in. He's like, well, once we capture this bear, we just have to, maybe we'll sit down and have some dinner. I've got some meat paste and pickles. Yeah. It went off last Tuesday, but I mean, you have like a week or so. Like this dialogue is so dumb. You poor Mr. Curry. You don't even realize what you're saying, but it's so wonderful. It's great. It's great. Oh, man.
So I think the last couple of people that we haven't really talked about yet are the aunt and uncle. We just kind of mentioned them in passing.
Yeah. I feel like we get an interesting interaction seeing them the first time when they're with the explorer and then seeing them again. Yeah. Later on when they are now when Paddington is now with them, the extent to which they took all of the stuff that the explorer left and changed this tree house into like basically this factory for making marmalade, and they just have all of these different things that they've acquired. So again, there's this idea that you've brought up again, this whole like fantastical element to the world where it's like there's talking bears and that's an okay thing. Yeah. And these talking bears actually have like this weird kind of pedal bicycle that allows for them to churn out these oranges. I guess they were some kind of bitter orange or something.
They're very big Anglophiles.
Yes. Yeah. So
yeah, like how they listen to that tape, the English tape, every night.
Yes.
And they have the 107 different ways to say how it's raining.
It's raining. Yeah. Which Paddington goes on to use a lot of those.
Uses quite a few throughout the entire movie.
Yeah. Like
it's bucketing down.
Yeah. It's been chucked down. Yeah. It's drizzling. He uses some regular ones. what was the one that he used when he first meets Mrs. Brown? It was the weirdest one that I've never heard. It was like, it's coming down in stair rods or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Something weird like that. I'm like, what does that even mean? Oh my goodness! Like, do the British do they actually use 107 different ways to say how it rains? Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh dear, is that offensive to ask? Oops. Oh dear. Anyway, yeah. So the aunt and uncle, they're. I feel like that was also the first little bits of the uncle interacting with Paddington, and when Paddington has his hat, and it gets sloshed through the marmalade. Again, I felt like that joke was a little bit more slapsticky, kiddie kind of humor when he throws the hat back on and just drips marmalade all over him. So I guess there were certain aspects where I felt like, okay, this is getting into kiddish kind of humor, and so like but for the most part, I felt like the humor was really well done.
Yeah, definitely.
And not just kiddie. So I thought that was pretty good. The only thing that I have a final question on is going back to Mr. Curry and wondering what happened to him, because we get Millicent and we get what happens to her, and more or less we get what happens with the Browns and Paddington and even the aunt at the end, where she actually is at the home for the retired old bears, but I don't know what happens with Mr. Curry. So I don't know if that's a question that gets answered in Paddington 2 or not, whether he comes back, but it is one where I feel like him and the pigeons try to figure out what happened to the pigeons. What
happened to the pigeons?
Yeah. Because, I mean, the last we saw, they were
flying off the roof.
Flying off the roof.
Did they get that sandwich?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah. Well, I guess to wrap a few things up, there were a few other comedy lines that I feel like were just kind of thrown in there. Like, some of them felt like it's just kind of like out of nowhere. Like, this is just very... They just needed to have something said here, and it's just so kind of off the wall. Just kind of like non sequitur to some degree. It's just like, what?
Yeah, like when Judy was learning Mandarin, and one of the things that she was learning was that I've been accused of insider trading and need legal representation. Yeah, like,
what kind of niche, like, Chinese language learning tool is this that's teaching you about that? Or the two security guards that were for the train station.
Paddington Station.
Yeah, Paddington Station, where they're just like reading, I think it was off of like Oreos. And then just
nutrition
like
information off Oreos.
Like, how much sodium?
Per biscuit.
Per biscuit. It's like, oh, I know this one. It's like, oh, do you? Like, what? The carbohydrates. The line where they're, I think it's when they are they gave Paddington the bath and are now like drying him off.
Yeah.
And you hear the kids making this racket, and so immediately Mr. Brown's like, oh, they're screaming. What is Paddington doing to them? And Mrs. Brown's just like, no, darling. That's just
sound of laughter.
That's the sound of laughter. This is normal. And when they do go and check on Paddington, they have the blow dryers, and Paddington's just like, oh, hot wind. Two hot winds. Oh, it's great. The last one I wrote down was when Mr. Brown is like tapping on the window and trying to like talk to Paddington, when he's like kind of groggy coming out of the sleep from Millicent drugging him with the little like blow dart thing, and he just kind of like has his hands folded on his chest and he's closed his eyes. And he's like, "Is that you, God?" He's like,
Yeah.
No, it's Mr. Brown. You sound very much like Mr. Brown.
Yeah.
What?
It does seem kind of a little weird though. Like it's funny, but I don't know. It just seemed kind of different than the rest of the humor.
Right.
That last one.
Yeah. So I was like, I don't know if this is a reference to something, like what this is, because it did feel like, again, like this kind of weird non sequitur. Was like, where is this coming from? Like, I guess, does he think he's died and passed away?
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess, the last thing he did see was Millicent,
yeah.
Threatening to stuff him and throw him in a glass box.
Yeah.
So, who knows?
Then one last quote that I want to kind of end with, not as funny, but kind of sums up the theme.
Yes.
As it's in Paddington's last letter to his aunt.
Yes.
He says that Mrs. Brown has this. She says this thing that everyone in London is different, but that means that anyone can fit in.
Yeah.
So kind of this, you can find your home anywhere type
Right. Yeah.
line.
Yeah, and that was again, definitely something that was really well done through this movie, of kind of dealing with some of these hard topics of what do you do with someone who's different from you, and do you just ignore them? Do you shun them, or do you try and learn about them and learn from them and accept them? So it's something that definitely very relevant to today's political kind of world as well.
Yeah, I feel like the best kids movies have those sort of messages that seem a little bit more adult or mature.
Right.
Like I mentioned, Zootopia being a very big, talking about racism and stuff.
Right.
Or when we did The Iron Giant, it kind of talked about being scared of other cultures. And,
right.
And
And weapons.
Yeah.
And what it means to like be like the giant being a weapon, and like what his identity was. So yeah, that's definitely something that I feel is important in a movie, to not just be like a silly kind of movie, but to have something that does kind of spark some kind of thought and some kind of discussion that you can have. So I feel like that's kind of a lot of the movies that we're picking kind of are going to be ones where we should be able to have some kind of discussion on that. So, yeah.
That will do it for this video. We would like to thank Mel Eastup for creating our theme.
And join us in the comments section below to go over any other questions and add to the discussion.
And subscribe so you don't miss our next few videos. I forgot to mention last video that this month there are actually 5 Tuesdays, so instead of our regular just first and third Tuesday of the month, we will be having our special
extra episode
on the 5th Tuesday, where we go into either do an R-rated movie or a season of a TV show.
Right.
And this upcoming 5th Tuesday, we're going to be discussing the movie Hacksaw Ridge. And then 1 week after that, we will get back into our regular schedule with the movie Primer.
Yeah, and we'll have a special surprise to go along with that movie as well. So tune in. Thanks for watching. This has been FoxTales Movie Club. I'm Tony.
And I'm Fox, and we will see you in the next video.